Okay, so I am going to try to very quickly take you through some of our expanded access provisions, some touch on special considerations for gene therapy, talk a moment about right to try, and talk about our commitment to facilitating patient access. The bottom line up front is that we actually try to facilitate access as best we can at FDA, but just let's be clear. We want to facilitate access to products that are safe and, if possible, effective. We can't facilitate access to unsafe products. Okay, that's not something that we're supposed to be doing, and that is something that we have to be careful about. So, for expanded access, there are certain conditions that must be met, and patients have to have a serious disease or condition. Life has to be immediately threatened by their disease or condition is another alternative way of getting there. There can't be a satisfactory alternative to deal with the disease or condition. Enrollment in a clinical trial should not be possible. The patient benefit should justify the potential risks of treatment. And these are in our regulations. The investigational medical product use should not interfere with the development of the drug, because for the larger good, that's not helpful. And very importantly, the sponsor has to agree to provide the product. Okay, FDA cannot compel a sponsor to provide product. This is a free country, and that's not something we can do. There are several different provisions of expanded access, and this goes to this concept of, even though there are essentially a certain number of requests for expanded access, in some cases it means that many people have been treated, and because, as you'll see, there are 3 different tiers, and for one of the tiers you can actually treat thousands of people under one expanded access request. So for individual patient access, which is one patient and one request, the physician has to determine the probable risk from the drug does not exceed that from the disease. There has to be a determination that you can't get access under an IND or other protocol. In general, these types of treatments are limited to one course, and at the end of this, we expect to get some type of written summary. The idea being that in some cases we've collected, there are actually approvals that have occurred because we've collected individual patient accesses, and you can put together enough information to actually figure out that a drug is having an effect. We have an emergency pathway, which is applicable for a subset of individual patient access where there's a true emergency. I know because I get these occasionally. People call me in the middle of the night when they can't find someone else. We grant these if somebody has a company willing to provide the drug, there's an emergency, and we authorize access on the spot or within hours generally of getting the request, and then a submission is subsequently made and IRB notification is subsequently made. We then have another pathway for use when more than one patient is potentially being treated, and that occurs in situations when a drug is not being developed actively by a manufacturer, but you still need access to it. Sometimes it's probably the most common case, it's being developed, but there are people who don't meet the eligibility criteria. And in some cases, it's because there's a drug shortage, and we will authorize an intermediate-size expanded access program to bring in a foreign version of a U.S. product. There has to be, for this type of population, there has to be sufficient evidence that the proposed dose and duration is reasonable to justify the number of patients treated. Generally, these protocols treat anywhere from a few individuals to up to about 1,000. Don't quote me on that exact number, but it's tens to hundreds. And there also, per our regulations, has to be some preliminary evidence of effect, which can be clinical or plausible pharmacologic evidence of that effect. And then the most expansive way of getting access is treatment IND or a treatment protocol. And that's usually done to bridge a period where a product is done with its clinical trials and it's awaiting licensure or approval. And because marketing authorization is being pursued and you want to have access to a larger patient population. This has happened, for instance, for certain vaccines when potentially thousands of individuals can get access under this pathway. And here you have to have sufficient evidence of safety and effectiveness. Basically, this should be a product that is approvable. Gene therapies present some special considerations here because we really think that here every patient has something to contribute to the extent that they can fall into clinical trials. And that's why they should be involved in well-controlled clinical trials whenever possible. The difference here with gene therapies, they aren't, I mean, I used to work in small molecule drug development. These products don't have the same kind of, Cmax, Tmax, T1/2, AUC that small molecule or even protein therapeutics have. So one has to really think about what one's doing here. And for some of the cellular therapies, some of the same types of considerations apply, particularly in a cell that can engraft. To get access, it was already on some other slides, there's a form we have streamlined this process. It used to be less clear for physicians what to do. You can click on the link at the bottom of these slides, and these slides are freely available, but you can go to our website and for expanded access and click, and it'll kind of take you through the process step by step, but it's a form that gets filled out and it can get sent in. In the event that there's not time for that, there is a number to call. We have emergency call center that people can call to talk to us about getting an emergency IND approval. So each of the centers at FDA, be it drugs, devices, or biologics, we have a way of getting in touch, and we generally are pretty good about granting these requests, as already been mentioned. When we don't grant a request, there's usually a very good reason for it. We generally can't talk about it because products under INDs, just so you know, the federal law says that I can't tell you about somebody's product that's under IND. I can't even acknowledge that we have an IND for it. That's just the law, and I don't want to go to jail. I have college-age kids, I got to keep going. The Right to Try Act. Our goal at FDA is to basically keep our hands, just top-line message, we want to keep our hands out of this as much as we are supposed to, which is basically we're just responsible for some reporting requirements, and that's what we're going to take care of. Otherwise, as the Act really passed, they wanted us to stay out of this as much as possible. So although an annual report has to be submitted with the number of patients treated and with the adverse effects that may have occurred, that's pretty much the kind of extent of things. And let me just tell you that obviously an eligible patient here has to have a life-threatening disease or condition. They have to exhausted approved treatment options. They have to be unable to participate in a clinical trial with the drug as certified by a physician, not by FDA. This is a physician's issue. The investigational drug can only be provided if it's not approved or licensed for any use. So if it's an approved drug, right to try is not the appropriate pathway, but that's your determination, by the way. And we're not going to tell you that. You have to determine that. It has to have completed a phase 1 trial. You have to figure that out. We're not going to tell you that. By the way, we can't even acknowledge that the IND existed. It's either the subject of an NDA or BLA filed with FDA, or it's under investigation in a clinical trial that is intended to form the primary basis of a claim of effectiveness. Now, this is tough for gene therapies because you can imagine one trial, an early stage trial, where that is the intended use of the trial, but that's the way it is. And the product actually has to be actively developed, and the one thing is the IND cannot be on hold. But guess what? That's yours. You're taking on the responsibility for determining that. That's not something FDA is going to do. If you contact us about these things, we're going to send you a letter back that says, thanks very much for contacting us. It's the responsibility of the investigator and the sponsor to figure this stuff out. And that's fully with the intent of Congress, okay? Because if I start to do anything more than that, I'm going to get called. Yesterday I was in the hearing room on Capitol Hill. I'll get called down there and they'll ask me, why do I have my grubby fingers on right to try? So our goal is to allow this to play out. I don't have an opinion about this that I can tell you, because anything I tell you up here is the opinion of the FDA, not my personal opinion. So that's the way it is. Sponsors are responsible for making the determination of whether their products are appropriate for access under right to try. That said, we at FDA are very committed to providing safe access with investigational therapies for patients with serious conditions. And now I can tell you something that just is related to this, and it's not directly about right to try. The Center for Biologics Evaluation and Research was actually founded before the FDA in 1902, and it was because of some real disasters with manufacturing of biologic products. A total of 22 kids died in 1901 in two separate incidents, one in St. Louis, Missouri, and the other in Camden, New Jersey, where there were contaminated biologic products due to really just silly manufacturing mistakes. What the history has taught us is that there are a lot of people that will try to purvey products that don't have efficacy because there's a monetary issue going on. And so our job at FDA is to make sure products are safe, make sure they're safe, pure, potent in the biologics world, and also make sure they have efficacy. If you look today at this world of stem cells and gene therapies, gene therapies are a real area. Stem cell therapies, there's still a lot of hype there. People purvey them sometimes without actually having the science behind them. So it's a concern. We see problems. We're committed to facilitating access whenever we can. In cases where we don't, it's generally because we have a good reason to think that the product is not going to be safe. We generally, the efficacy issues are generally less of an issue as we're providing access. So I'll stop there.
Time for one question. Dr. Marks has to lead.
Hi, I'm Terry Flott from UMass. I'm a physician scientist. I just wanted to comment. I want to comment. I've had the opportunity to be involved in treating patients on a couple of expanded access INDs in the last couple of years. One of which I'm the PI, and we probably for one of them really couldn't have done it without some technical guidance from the reviewers inside of CBER. So I'm just saying. I wanted to thank you, but also say that I've found, as a physician treating patients with genetic conditions, that for gene therapy, that the folks at CBER, in particular in that office, they're helping. They were helping very much.
Yeah. Just thank you for that comment. Just to echo, I think something that sometimes people don't realize, that the people who come to FDA, they're generally physicians. Many of our reviewers are physicians or scientists who they actually come to work each day. I don't think anyone, I'm pretty sure that nobody at our center comes to work thinking, wow, what red tape can I put that can help prevent patients get access to therapies. In general, people come to work trying to do their best. And there was an incident over the past government shutdown during Christmas where we had at least 4 people working on Christmas Day trying to get access for a patient, and everyone was doing their best. And so people really are committed to this. So again, it doesn't speak directly to right to try, but it does speak hopefully to the fact that we have a really strong commitment to helping to facilitate access whenever we can. Thanks.